Content warning. This recording contains references to suicide, mental health issues, and addiction. If you or someone you know is struggling, please seek help from a local crisis support center. Hello and welcome to True Colors with Mark Ruschielli.
Well, and you've passed that skill on. I've also been benefited from what you've taught me and being part of the group. And I think that's also that coach, that voice of reassurance that used to be all negative. It's being okay with saying, okay, this happens, life happens, traffic happens. People are not all the same, to be very, very nice, but to learn to accept it. And I guess the regulation part's a key. I think that when I started to learn to self-regulate, to learn how to ground and acceptance, Steve, you really hit a point that, we carry these things almost like we're looking for an end game and there's no end game. And I think, and I'll talk about suicide for a minute, and thank you for sharing, because I've lost a few brothers myself and not that long ago. And we want to hope the feeling goes away and it never happens again, and that continues to happen. But I think what needs to be brought to light is, and I did the first aid, suicide phase first aid course, and it talks about most people don't want to die. They just want the pain to stop. Mm-hmm. And I think that for someone who's struggling right now, especially in silence, they need to understand that there are avenues. It's just finding the right one. And like you say, and I thank you for sharing that. That's you plotted it out, and again, you had a higher power looking out for you, and the opening doors with Manuela. And I like sharing. I like talking about it because that's part of the stigma that a lot of people are afraid to sit amongst. They're afraid to sit and get emotional a little bit. But when you've been hurt to a place like you have, but you're still willing to lead group, you're still willing to do the things to advocate, you're still willing to share part of your story, you still have struggles, right? We may always have struggles.
Yeah, I still struggle frequently. I still have cognitive processing issues. I used to read 2 or 3 books a week. I cannot read a paragraph. I get confused. Then I get mad at myself for the confusion, and then I throw the book on the ground. Mm. I have word finding problems on occasion. It's funny that I'll do these podcasts and I don't have it, but then I'll go talk to somebody and I'll be like stuttering because I can't get this word out. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what part of your brain is thinking when you're doing that stuff, but my sleep is still not amazing, right? I still I'm in a loving relationship with my wife for 33 years. She runs a spouses support group as well to try to help the spouses. I have 3 kids. My son's in the true team of the OPP, in the middle of training right now. And I have a great life. But I can tell you, I'd love to have my own apartment because I have nobody to disappoint. If I cause a problem, I'm the one who's responsible, and I'm not hurting anybody. So even though I have this big, huge, loving environment, I still want to be by myself, mm-hmm. right? Because it's safe. It's safe to be by yourself. And that is a big PTSD symptom. And probably I've had that symptom since I was 6 years old, right? And I've learned that, and it's almost in my DNA. I know it's unhealthy, but that's another coping skill that I have that's just not the healthiest, because we do need human connection. We need to talk to people. It is the cure to this injury. Mm-hmm. And the more that you can do it and eventually become to trust that the world is a good place. I really like the Buddhist philosophy of pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. Yeah. Nothing you're going to do is going to avoid pain. Pain is going to happen all the time. It's how do you want to deal with that pain? And do you want to suffer? Or do you want to accept that the pain has occurred? You don't even have to blame. If there's somebody to blame, you can try to stop it. But you can say, pain occurred. Is this going to define me? Or am I going to suffer and dwell on it? Or am I going to accept what's occurred to me? So it's something called radical acceptance. And I'm going to accept what's happened to me. And I am going to move on from this. And so I feel that people, when they get injured with this, they eventually have to accept that I'm injured. I did my best. And I'm going to try to do better as I go on.
That's really good. You've hit a few things that I was a approval dependent. I was a people pleaser. I wore a mask that way, coping since I was a kid. And that cost me as I came into the career, because that added to that Jenga tower that we talk about. And the tower was already vulnerable. And now you're adding stuff that's not even mine. But as first responders, we have no control over the calls we go to. Once I understood that I was the only one that could do something about that, I was the only one to accept my past. And I've done my own healing and recovery with, trauma, but also psychology, but also through sobriety, which was also a crutch for me. And understanding what it was killing my liver, it was truly putting me into like they call it a coward suicide. It's just accepting the circumstances and continuing to cause the harm. And I can't argue with that, because that's exactly what I was doing. And it wasn't until a liver doctor said, you're going to die. And I think it's important because it all looks so different. Everyone can say, what exact signs this is, or how does it present? And we all present a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. But there are some similarities, especially in the masking. Mm-hmm. And maybe I'll get you to talk about why you feel, and I don't want to say performance, but let's call it that. We're performing, we're acting, we're not being fully truthful. If we're fine, which again, I don't like the word, but we tell people we're okay. I think maybe you could share a little bit about the damage that causes to not just policing, to anyone going through trauma.
Well, there's a really good book with Gabor Mate, The Body Says No, and it talks about how if you repress emotions, it can't be contained. So this masking that we learned, I learned masking probably at an early age. My dad, alcoholic, I would come home from school around 4:00. And the first thing I would do is I would check the Molson 50-2-4, always by the kitchen, to see how many beers were missing. And I knew if more than 6 or 7 beers were missing, maybe it's not a good time to be at home. So I would isolate, hang around the backyard, go in the basement, whatever like that. So I learned this isolation thing. Then I get into policing, and you realize that, holy cow, man, bad things are happening. I have no idea. And everybody around me is stoic and not showing any emotion and all that. So they are teaching you, even subconsciously, to eventually become stoic and shut that shit off. So that masking part of it happens. So why do we also don't want to tell people? I don't know if we feel like we're hiding and telling everybody that we're okay. So everybody can be on their best behavior when you're with somebody for a short period of time. Mm-hmm. It's no problem, right? You can fake it till you make it, and you can even tolerate it even though you might be hurting inside. But now be around somebody for a long time. So for me, I'm at home and I'm not telling my wife that anything's wrong, but I'm saying I'm fine, but I'm computer gaming, I'm watching TV, I've zoned out and I'm not present in my family. So even though you would say that I'm hiding like a chameleon, I'm not really. Other people see that. My wife, I would hear her say, "Hey boys, leave your dad alone. He just needs to be quiet," on many, many occasions. So the kids were always walking around on eggshells around me, because if they interrupted me in my isolation, sometimes I'd be like my dad, where I would yell at them. And I'm not even an alcoholic or a drinker. You know what I mean? I would do the exact same coping that my dad was doing, and I hated it. I couldn't believe. I go, how can I be doing this? Like, I hated that my dad did this to me. And I went into policing for this very reason. And I'm teaching my kids to be this way. Now I'm becoming this way. And this is what led me to, this suicidal thing, saying, I really need to take myself out to stop this cycle of violence, right? And a cycle of bad coping or bad behavior. And, but honestly, I was just doing the best. I had no training in this. Nobody explained to me what I need to do. My parents didn't know any different. My mom is, my mom was like just a very smart person. She became the head nurse of a hospital, Hamilton General Hospital, and she was dealing with her stress by drinking a lot too. My dad was a war veteran who never had a dad. People had tried to kill him multiple times. Like, he's just doing the best that he can. So we don't go to school for, how to deal with this kind of stuff. So yeah, when we're at work, are we really masking it? Do you see that guy that's just not smiling anymore? You know what I mean? So you would say that, yeah, he's masking, but he's not really. He's just not overtly emotional, because if somebody's at work and they lose it and they're emotional and, dysregulated, work is very quickly to get those people out of there, right? They're immediately on sick leave or reassigned or whatever, because they don't want that infection to happen. I sent out that email about World War I, where on one day of the war, they executed 133 people because they had they had shell shock, and they said it was cowardice. So they just shot them with rifles in the British Army, right? So that's kind of what we do at work. Right? If you see somebody completely lose it or lose their marbles, and the supervisor sees that, they immediately target those people for removal in any way possible, either through discipline or saying you need to take some time off, or we're reassigning you to a different spot. So if you are not stoic and quiet, then you're gone. So you learn that quickly.
How can we change that?
How can we change that? I think we just need to accept that we have to have realistic expectations. We have to realize that people are going to be like this. If we explain it early on, and we're laughing at the snowflake generation that we have now, these people that want to be promoted right to the top of the thing, and they don't want to work on that. You got to do 35 years just like me, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. Maybe the young kids nowadays are smarter than us. They do a job for a few years and they move on to another job. They worry about themselves. They're not too worried about promotion or any of that kind of stuff. They, it's a different mindset. So I think things are changing, and I think somewhere in between, something good will happen. My son already, he's like only 4 years into OPP. He had a psychologist from day one, and even though sometimes he'll walk in and says, "I don't know what to talk about," the psychologist is like, "Well, let's talk about the couple calls that you're on," and then she would pick up. Poke at him saying, "Well, how come you're not talking about this call?" Yet my son would have me on speed dial. One time he was looking for a despondent person, and he was searching by a train, and this guy said to 911 he was going to kill himself. And my son walked past him, didn't see him, and when he turned around, the guy was sitting there and he's pointing a shotgun right at him at point blank range. And my son couldn't believe it, and he goes, the despondent guy says, "You have to kill me now." And then my son just put his hand out and said, "I'm not killing you. I'm going to help you instead." And, but he was very shocked about that. He goes, "I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I could have got somebody killed. I could have killed this person." And he was just beating himself up. And I go, "Well, I'm glad, these are all good things that you're thinking, Zach. It's okay. It's okay to say, I make mistakes, or I should be more hypervigilant or whatever." I go, "Well, did you talk to your psychologist about that?" "Well, no. I'm talking to you about it, Dad." I go, "Okay, but you need to learn that your doubts, your fears need to be talked about, and it's okay to talk about that stuff, right? You're not sparing somebody some stuff. You need to get off that your chest, because repression's not healthy."
No, it's not. And I thank you for sharing that, because I consider it debt. Are we accepting debt? If every day we go to work, we carry it. Some days it's easier to get rid of it. Other days it stays for a long, long time if we're not willing to understand what the harm is, and wears our body down. Again, the highlight reel in our brain. We all are quite aware of that. I want to touch back to, again, us sharing this story, and you sharing, some of those things that certainly you've been privy to a lot, especially with how advocating you have been for so many, and hope, none more than your son. And I think it's important. I ran into a former president of our union where I wanted to apply for a position. He knew I was not in any position to do so. mentally he knew the cost. All he told me was, continue doing what you're doing. He said, I would argue you are at work. What you're doing by sharing videos, sharing your story. You know, there was a time where I was isolated. That's a phone call I made to you. That's when the lights came on for me. If I can share that for a second. I had felt lost. I was hiding. Well, they thought it was post-concussive, but all the signs were there for trauma. I had been diagnosed in 2017, and a neuropsychologist had actually said, we don't see post-concussion, we see trauma, Mark. I was more angry that they didn't believe me. Rather than figuring it out, I was so angry, I wanted nothing to do with it. Now, whether it's WSIB, union, management, I'm an open book because I have nothing to hide, nothing to be ashamed about. This isn't my fault. But as you and I would agree, it's my responsibility. If I want to sit and accept this and not heal, that's on my own. But as I've learned that there's better avenues, and there's certainly, we're very fortunate in this area, in the city, to have our group. Our group needs to be looked upon as, whether we're there every week or not just as a reactive group, it's proactive. Mm-hmm. Right? I think that's important. It's hard to tell a 22-year-old coming into a career that you need to go talk about emotions and feelings when they've never done that. But as an old psychologist would say, you just need to empty the trunk, mm-hmm. right? You're carrying some other debt, and learn to diffuse it, coming in with a clean slate. People will forget sometimes when they see officers, first responders at scenes, they're dealing with things, and they may have had an argument with their wife. Their kid may have told them some unbelievable things. Now they're trying to clear their mind and focus on what's in front of them. It's not a game. It's not a movie. This is real life. But to say that you can hold it together comes down to, and I love this saying, we don't rise to the level of our expectations. We fall to the level of our competency and our training. And I think that has a lot to do with the regulation pieces that you talked about. If we're not teaching the regulation, we're going to continue to struggle as first responders, because we'll continue to not be truthful and honest about how I'm feeling. I think it's what you're doing is helping so many, whether it's sharing on YouTube, running group, going places, trying new things. You've been a guinea pig for a lot of things. And I think that's the true definition of a leader. A leader is not the one with the most gold on their epaulette. The leaders are the ones that inspire by action. And however we got here, I think that's something, Steve, that you need to understand. And I'll speak on behalf of the group and the people that appreciate you. That is action that you've chose to use: shame, guilt, hurt, anything that people would tell you, don't talk about it, tuck it away. You choose to shine the light on it so that others don't have to, right? Others that may not be, and let's be honest, willing to accept that yet.
Or maybe they just have never had the opportunity. If I didn't get kicked hard and knocked to the ground and almost cost me my life, I probably wouldn't have learned this lesson.
Yeah, it's so
right.
true.
So I'm sitting in this chair, not despite of what happened to me, but as a normal progression of life. And I've just decided that I want to come out a different way than that, and that we can do better, and that we could try to have a healthy career. Mm-hmm. But I don't say try to have 30 years. I'm trying to have a healthy career, and however long that is. And then when the time comes and you start seeing the effects of PTSD entering your life, and it can't be managed, so maybe we need to take a break.
Yeah.
You know, hey, these new kids nowadays, they want to have 7 micro retirements before they retire. You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe we should be doing something like that. Why isn't in the States do they have 20 years and out? Why here in Canada do we have 30 and out? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, they must know something there. Like, why are people just doing 20 years in that? And it's interesting. The average age for first responders that are leading to permanent disability is 42 years of age with 20 years of service. Wow. If you hit 42 years of age with 20 years of service and you put a WSIB claim in, you have a 6% chance of returning to pre-injury duties. If you're off longer than 2 years, This is WSIB stats. If you're off longer than 2 years, you have a 0.02% chance of getting back to pre-injury duties. You don't even have a 1% chance of getting back to pre-injury duties. Some people will fake it and go back to pre-injury duties, but they're still highly injured. They've just, Pandora's box exploded, whatever made them go off work. And it could be anything. The straw that breaks the camel's back is not a traumatic event usually. It's my supervisor told me I'm an idiot. My wife yelled at me. I didn't win the bingo. Mm-hmm. Whatever it is that breaks that straw that breaks the camel's back and releases Pandora's box of emotions, upset, can't sleep. I go on a drinking binge. I eat, whatever it's going to be, porn, whatever it is that you make you go haywire. What people think is, I just need to put that all back in the box when the box is telling you, look after yourself, and they ram all that box down, they shut that shit off and they crush it right into there and then they return back to work.
Yes.
That's not a healthy person, especially when 4% of people with PTSD are homicidal. So I could tell you right now, we have about 90 people at the London Police Service. 4% of people are homicidal. So you have probably 6 or 7 officers walking around with a handgun that are homicidal right now, right? We need to accept that this is the injury. This is part of doing business, and that we need to look after the people and not shun them or stigmatize them or target them for removal. We just need to be compassionate and say, you've done your share. You've done as much as you can. I'd love us to have have some kind of party for them and say, Steve, here's your Purple Heart. Right? In the movies we see that the general comes around with the Purple Hearts in the hospital for the guys that are all blowing up and everything like that. Well, if you see somebody percolating and hurting, you tell them, brother, you've done enough. Here's your medal. And let's just see if we can help you have an elegant and happy career after this.
I think you've nailed something that I love. I love reading philosophy, and it's helped me heal, to learn about stoicism and self-regulation. And I think it's when we champion things that people are doing right. And that's exactly what you're talking about, recognizing people for what they're doing and accepting their circumstances. And not that we want a trophy, but understanding that this invisible injury, we continue to make it invisible in so many ways. We can talk about it. It's June's this is a health month. We have a Bell, Health Day, but it's every single day of the year. It's 24/7 and 365. And I think when we start giving people credit for what they've carried and not look at it as they didn't cut it, not look at it as they couldn't make it or they weren't hacked out for this career. And I think that's such a misnomer, because that means they've failed at something. And I think you've nailed also this as a career. Don't look at it as 30 years, break it into segments. Let's do inventories. Let's check and see where we're at. We, as first responders, we hit hard in the divorce rate. We hit hard in suicides. We hit hard in a lot of depression, addiction. And I think when we start getting accountable to self and we start being able to have conversations like this, not as detriment, but it's to open up, like you say, open the box so we can heal. Like you say that, and I love the kitchen garbage bag analogy. You can keep stuffing it down and grab the bag and wonder why it broke. Mm-hmm. But it's when you kept stuffing that in there and hoping it would hold. You need to learn, that's not all yours to keep, not all yours to carry. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to read you a quote and just see your take on it. It says, sometimes as individuals or as a member of a group, we may sacrifice the truth in order to secure our identity or preserve a sense of belonging. Anything that threatens this gives rise to fear and anxiety. So we deny, we cut off our feelings. Sharon Salzberg wrote that. It's actually called a book called Loving Kindness. It's the revolutionary art of happiness. Mm-hmm. And I think when I read that, I was like, wow, I'm going to use that because, and you've already talked about depriving joy, depriving happiness, and I share that sentiment. How does that make you feel when you hear that?
Interesting that you've done this because you've hit my cognitive processing. So for you to read that to me and me process it, I'm having a difficulty, so I'm going to ask you to do it again.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes as individuals or as a member of a group, we may sacrifice the truth in order to secure our identity or preserve a sense of belonging. Anything that threatens this gives rise to fear and anxiety. So we deny, we cut off our feelings.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I think this
Thanks for
is
saying that, by the way.
I know.
Push it
It
through.
was funny. It was like, so people ask me, well, what are your examples of this cognitive processing? Well, that was it right there.
Yeah.
I'm listening to what you're saying, and in my mind, it's like, blah, 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 blah.
Charlie's
Like,
Brown.
Yeah.
Charlie
you know what I
Brown's
mean?
teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah. But I think it's the illusion that we have at our workplace, right? Like I think it encompasses everything that we're talking about as well here. So, and it does deny us our happiness because we are in this illusion, and we have this false expectation that we're okay, and as a result, we're not happy. And and in the PTSD support group now, I barely have any active duty people in it. I have all retirees that are now finished it and just thought, if I can make it through my career and I'm done, everything will be okay.
That interesting.
And then what happens is they realize that I've just left my tribe. We're identified with people, and I have nothing. And my wife has left me. Some guys are on their third or fourth wife. We're 3 or 4 times more likely to get divorced. Everybody has health issues. Cancer in group is huge. Suicide. We've had group members kill themselves, and I've had conversations with the group member before they kill themselves saying, hey man, you'll get through this. This is just a temporary state. And as long as you don't impulsively kill yourself, you'll be okay. And then an impulsive suicide occurs. So yeah, I think and we just don't know. Like, think about PTSD and trauma and all this has been happening through all human times, right? Like Viking barbarians. So Vikings, when they would fight and very brutal and killing each other. Once they started losing it, they became berserkers. So they would strip all their armor off and they would run into battle naked and hopefully die from a glorious death. And if they didn't die from that glorious death and they made it to become frail and old, then they would have a ceremony and they'd jump off a cliff.
Wow.
Right? Japanese, samurai.
The swords.
This, right? They're killing people, but they also teach them about the cherry blossom. They teach them about calligraphy. They teach them about art, having a tea ceremony and all that. So you can't have killing, brutal rage in the worst way to kill somebody with a sword. And, you have to have a blend of both of it. And when they couldn't do that anymore and they were dishonoring themselves, they would stick a knife in their guts and then their friend would chop their head off. So that was the ultimate way of dealing with PTSD back then. In the Roman times, right in the middle of Roman squares, they'd have the medicae walking around and he'd have a steel spike and a hammer. And you could go up to him and saying, I'm not happy with life right now. Can you spike me? And he would do your will. You pay him a fee. You would do your will. You would talk about everything that needs to go on. And then he would spike you in the head and you would die. And that's how acceptable it was. And they would do it in the military as well. So we have been dealing with PTSD forever. World War I, they were shooting people for it. So we have been dealing with this through all human history. I think as we get older and now, because, if you think about the age of psychology, it's not that old, right? It's, compared to how other things have done. Like the Sidiyang and Kriya yoga that I told you about, they've been doing that for like 6,000 years. So maybe they know a little bit more than us. Right? In North American culture. North American culture with the 3rd highest PTSD rate in the world. Right now, there's 5,500 first responders off in Ontario. There's 11,000 in Canada. We have the 3rd highest PTSD rate in the world. And we have the poorest outcomes. Israeli soldiers, 1%. At work, we have right now at work, the London Police Service, I think they have 30% non-deployable. Right? So
I think
do
the
not do a
somatic
good
healing
job.
you're talking about is, I'm hoping to have an episode just on that. Because I think, again, it's Body Keeps the Score. It's not just the title of a great book. It's something that if we ignore, we're failing ourselves. And, I thank you for today.
I'd like to talk about one thing before I do, because there's some people watching. So 4 years ago, we opened up 648 Huron Street. That's in London. There's 2 stability crisis beds. And those beds are for somebody like me or Mark, where we were thinking about suicide, because we do not want to go to the emergency department, and we do not want to be paraded in front of our coworkers. And then the staff of the hospital then end up on the 7th floor. My friend Omar Hassan killed himself. You can Google it. He was a police officer. He sent me a selfie one day beside somebody he had arrested 4 times. And he had his arm around him and he was smiling. And the next text that I received was, "I will never return here again." So I knew Omar was going to kill himself. And we tried hard for 3 weeks for him not to kill himself. And he told us, "I am ready to die." And he'd kill himself. So at 648 Huron, there's 2 stability beds. You can just simply call them and walk in and say, "I'm a first responder. I'm struggling. I just need a break and I need some time off." And they will look after you, and then they will get you into the system. Mark was speaking on that. We were at the fundraiser here. So suicide is just a temporary option. If you want to kill yourself, go ahead. But I can tell you right now that pain will end. You will be okay. You just need to be connected to the right people to help you get through this. You're not weak. We just don't know any better right now. And there's better ways, and you can be happy again. And maybe everything that's happening to you is for a reason, so that you can come out on the other side a happy and content person.
Well said. And I was going to ask you about speaking to the still suffering. So you've just pretty much hit it. And I think I'm going to add to what you said is the pain doesn't end. It gets transferred to the family and friends.
100%.
Right. And I think that's the part in suicide. People think it's, I'm not worth it. It's going to stop. We give the hurt and we just transfer it over. And when we accept that, we just have to try a new avenue. So I want to thank you, Steve. It's been a pleasure getting to know you. It's been 4 years since I've met you. And these 4 years have given me new hope in my life. I pray that you continue to grow yourself, evolve, and whatever's next for you now that you're officially retired, traveling, as I know you love to do, but continuing to understand that the work's never done, right? It's continuing to shine that light in ways that we can. We may not serve frontline, but I think this service today you've done for people is certainly what we need to hear. So
You're doing a good job, Mark. Keep talking to people, and even if it just helps, this just helps one person, right? We do a hard job. Okay, it has consequences, right? And we don't know those consequences. We don't have informed consent. Right? We don't have informed consent going into this job. So we need to be informed. We need to know there's a cost to it. And it's okay, because if I had to do this all over again, knowing that I have PTSD and almost kill myself, I would do it, because we get to do some cool shit.
That's well said too. Yeah. I can't deny that. So this is Mark signing off with Steve. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I just ask, if you're suffering, to reach out and recognize through the testimony today that you're not alone, and there is help available. Take care and God bless.
You've been listening to True Colors with Mark Ruscielli. Executive production by Mr. Norm Media Productions.